The most provocative word in becoming Filipino is not Filipino. It is becoming. Becoming suggests that identity is a direction rather than a possession. It is unfinished, always moving, always asking what comes next. But it also creates a problem. Can a person become part of a country by traveling through it, loving its people, learning its ways, building a home, and eventually becoming a citizen? Or does the camera remain outside the life it records, no matter how many roads it travels? That question sits inside almost every Kyle video. The channel is full of beaches, mountain roads, fiestas, storms, boats, family homes, food, and long scooter rides. But the real subject is not scenery. It is belonging as a performance. The repeated act of saying, showing, and proving that a place has become part of you. The videos rarely feel like conventional tourism. They do not move from one famous attraction to another as if the Philippines were a checklist. They slow down for a barangay road, a remote island, a local family, a roadside meal, or a conversation that would never appear in a resort brochure. The country is presented as a network of relationships rather than a collection of destinations. That distinction matters. Tourism usually asks what a place can offer the visitor. Becoming Filipino often asks what the visitor can learn from staying longer. The difference sounds small, but it changes the center of the story. A beach is no longer just a view. It becomes somebody's home, somebody's livelihood, somebody's memory, and somebody's responsibility. A road is not only a route to an attraction, it is the route people use when the camera is gone. In a GMA interview, Kyle described his preferred model of travel as local, purpose-driven, and slow. That idea is visible in the channel's form. The videos take time to arrive. They include detours, mechanical problems, weather, awkward introductions, and the slow accumulation of familiarity. A place is not made meaningful by a dramatic reveal. It becomes meaningful because the creator keeps returning to it. But slow travel is not automatically innocent. The person who can afford to move slowly is not always the person who has no choice but to stay. The visitor can treat remoteness as discovery. The people who live there may experience the same remoteness as an expensive boat ride, an unreliable signal, a difficult delivery, or a missing service. When the camera calls a place hidden, it may be naming a problem as much as a beauty. This tension is what makes the channel worth examining. Kyle does not simply point at the Philippines and say, "Look at this." He often tries to place himself inside the conditions of the place. He eats what is served, follows local directions, accepts discomfort, and lets the people around him determine the pace. Those choices can create a more respectful form of travel media. They can also create the impression that empathy is proven by endurance. The more difficult the road, the more legitimate the visitor's connection becomes. The title, Becoming Filipino, turns that endurance into a narrative. Every trip becomes another step toward an identity. Every friendship becomes evidence. Every local custom becomes something to learn. The danger is that Filipino identity starts looking like a collection of experiences available to anyone who works hard enough to gather them. But identity is not a souvenir shelf. It is not a passport of places visited, dishes eaten, words learned, or storms survived. A person can admire a culture without being entitled to speak for everyone inside it. A person can be welcomed by a community without representing the whole country. Belonging can be real and still be partial. This is especially clear when the channel moves from travel into home. Recent videos about a beach house, a mountain property, a Filipino family, and the possibility of leaving the Philippines change the emotional scale. The country is no longer only a place being explored. It is a place being invested in, maintained, protected, and sometimes left behind. The word home carries obligations that a destination does not. A destination can be beautiful even when the electricity fails. A home has to deal with the failure. A visitor can call a storm an unforgettable experience. A resident has to repair the roof, find food, check on neighbors, and decide whether to rebuild. Once travel content begins to show property, family, and long-term plans, the fantasy of pure discovery gives way to the reality of consequence. That reality makes the videos more intimate, but it also raises a harder question. Who gets to own a piece of the place they have learned to love? Buying land, building a house, or settling in a community can be presented as proof of commitment. It can also expose the unequal power between the newcomer and the people who were already there. The camera may frame the purchase as a personal dream, while the wider story includes land values, access, development, and the meaning of a foreigner becoming a neighbor. The channel's warmth does not erase these questions. In fact, the warmth makes them easier to miss. Kyle is often filmed laughing with families, sharing food, helping with a project, or being welcomed into a home. These scenes are moving because they show genuine affection. But affection and equality are not the same thing. A relationship can be sincere while still containing differences in money, mobility, language, citizenship, and audience. Every edit makes a decision about what a place means. A storm becomes resilience. A remote island becomes an adventure. A wedding becomes a promise. A family meal becomes proof of welcome. These meanings may be true, but they are never complete. The same storm can also be a warning about infrastructure. The same island can be a community with political and economic pressures. The same wedding can contain private histories that the video cannot show. This is not an argument against storytelling. It is an argument for noticing the frame. Becoming Filipino works best when it makes the frame visible, when the audience can feel the awkwardness of arrival, the limits of the visitor's knowledge, and the fact that local people are not supporting characters in a foreigner's self-discovery. They are the people who make the discovery possible. That restraint is difficult online. YouTube rewards clarity, novelty, and emotional payoff. Titles promise the most remote island, the most beautiful beach, the biggest fiesta, or a life-changing journey. Thumbnails turn distance into drama. A creator has to package a place before the audience will give it time. Even a channel built around slow travel must move at the speed of the recommendation system. The result is a productive contradiction. Becoming Filipino wants to resist shallow tourism, but it still depends on the attention economy. It wants to show ordinary life, but ordinary life must be made compelling. It wants to build relationships, but those relationships also become episodes. It wants to belong, but belonging is being recorded, edited, and watched by people who may never meet the community on screen. The channel is therefore not a pure record of the Philippines. It is a record of one person's changing relationship with the Philippines. That is a smaller claim, but it is also a more honest one. The country is not becoming Filipino through Kyle. Kyle is becoming someone who has been changed by particular Filipinos, particular places, and particular responsibilities. That distinction protects the people in the frame. It says that their kindness is not raw material for a foreign identity. Their homes are not merely evidence that the visitor has been accepted. Their stories do not exist to complete the creator's transformation. They have their own lives before the video, during the video, and after the video ends. In 2023, Kyle became a naturalized Filipino citizen after a public legislative and oath-taking process. That legal change matters. Citizenship carries rights, duties, and a formal relationship to the state that travel alone cannot provide. But even citizenship cannot turn one person's experience into a definition of Filipino identity. It can deepen belonging. It cannot make belonging uniform. The most meaningful part of becoming Filipino may be the fact that the word never resolves. Becoming is not a finish line reached by completing an itinerary. It is a discipline of remaining teachable. It means accepting that love for a place must survive disappointment, criticism, responsibility, and the discovery that the place is not a mirror designed to reflect you back kindly. The Philippines does not need a foreign witness in order to be beautiful. It does not need a vlogger to prove that its communities matter. But a thoughtful camera can redirect attention, slow the viewer down, and make a distant life feel less distant without pretending to own it. So can you truly become part of a country? Not completely. A country is made of too many histories, languages, wounds, jokes, obligations, and arguments for any one person to fully embody. But you can become accountable to a place. You can let its people change what you value. You can stop treating welcome as a reward and start treating it as a responsibility. And when the camera finally turns away, that is where belonging is tested. Not in the dramatic arrival, not in the perfect beach, and not in the applause of an audience, but in what remains after the story has been uploaded. If the place is still better understood, if the people are still more visible on their own terms, and if the visitor has learned to stand beside the story rather than at its center, then becoming has meant something. It has not made a country yours. It has made you answerable to it.